There's a moment in the downfall of the wicked that feels almost unreal. A moment where the person or people who once walked around with inflated confidence suddenly lose the impact they once had. Their presence doesn't intimidate, their tone doesn't shake the room, their tactics don't land, their pressure doesn't influence anyone. It's like their entire identity collapses in slow motion. This is where the chosen witness that collapse with clarity. This is the moment when their power stops working, not because you confronted them, not because you exposed them, and not because you fought back. Their power collapses simply because return to sender has stripped their authority of its false roots. They're left with nothing but their own intentions and the consequences attached to them. People assume wicked individuals gain their power through strength, through intelligence, through strategy, through dominance. But that is never the truth. Their power was built on four things, and all of them are unstable: secrecy, group reinforcement, assumed superiority, impunity. But let me just go in a little bit deeper with this. In secrecy, they counted on you not knowing what they said, what they planned, what they implied, what they attempted behind your back. Secrecy is not power, it's hiding. What about group reinforcement? They were only strong because others around them co signed their behavior. So this clan create a false sense of boldness. Take away the group, and the individual becomes small. They believe you were beneath them. This is when they assume superiority. They underestimated your spiritual covering. So they misjudged your emotional strength and they confused your silence for submission. That miscalculation was the seed of their downfall. And what about the impunity? They thought nothing would return to them. They thought no consequence existed. They thought patience meant permission. That delusion sustained their so called power. And when return to sender activated, every one of these foundations cracked. The first sign their power is crumbling show up in their voice. You'll hear it. They talk, but the intimidation is gone. They give instructions and nobody cares. They raise their tone and it feels empty because false authority cannot stand when truth steps into the room. This is what happens next. Their words no longer influence behavior. The people they once controlled begin acting differently. More neutral, less compliant, more questioning, less obedient. People start saying things like, I don't see what the big deal is. Why are you getting all worked up? I don't agree with that. And that's not how I see it. Now people are speaking to them using those lines. And their voice loses impact because their authority was borrowed from deception. And deception has now been repossessed, and their tone reveals their desperation. Their voice carries fear now, not power, and their tone becomes more frantic, and their attempts become exaggerated, and their expressions become forced, because desperation always replaces dominance when exposure approaches. Their energy shifts, right? People who once positioned themselves as leaders now look like agitators. Their confidence feels artificial and their presence feels unstable because the shift is spiritual. This shift is emotional, and this shift is the first sign that their power has expired. After their voice loses force, their actions begin betraying them. Wicked individuals are creatures of habit. When the chosen doesn't fall, they simply re escalate the same tactic. But in return to sender seasons, those same tactics expose them. This is how people see through the emotional pressure. People notice the exaggeration, and people catch the inconsistencies now. What once looked like influence now looks like desperation. See, a lie only works when people don't have context. But once return begins, people gain clarity. The gap between what they say and what is actually happening becomes too wide to hide. The same room they once controlled now resists them. People avoid eye contact. People don't validate their behavior, and people detach emotionally. You'll notice that the entire environment shifts the moment their power crumbles. Every move they make digs a deeper hole for them. Every comment reveals more of their motives. Every tactic exposes more truth, and every attempt accelerates their downfall. Return to sender doesn't just send back intentions, It rearranges the environment to make the collapse unavoidable. Malicious individuals rely heavily on image, not authenticity, not character, and not integrity, but image. Image is the armor, image is their shield, and image is their weapon. But return to sender seasons expose image for what it is, a fragile disguise. And this is what happens next. The questions begin quietly. Why do they always seem involved in negativity? Why do they react that way? What's their problem with that person? And why are they always stirring something? Because once people start asking these questions, their image is officially cracking. A wicked person's reputation is built on two things: what they hide and who they fool. So once the hiding stops and people stop being fooled, the pattern becomes undeniable. People begin connecting the dots. They did this before. They acted like this with them too, and this isn't new, right? And so their reputation begins to weaken. People distance themselves. People stop defending them. People stop believing their stories. Their social foundation collapses because it was built on deception and not respect. Masks are sustained by energy. When return hits, the spiritual pressure becomes too heavy to maintain the performance. So you will see the real person, the insecurity, the resentment, the jealousy, the entitlement, and even fear, because all the qualities they hid rise to the surface. This is not punishment, this is disclosure. The most telling moment in their downfall is not when people turn against them, or when their tactics fail, or when their reputation cracks. The most telling moment is when they lose control of their own inner world, their spirit. Their emotions become unpredictable, their reactions become exaggerated, and their behavior becomes inconsistent. And people begin noticing something is off. Why are they acting like that? Why are they so irritated? Because internal guilt always leaks externally. They were never built to carry their own intentions. Their mind can't sustain the pressure. Their thoughts will spiral. Their overthinking intensifies, and their composure drains. They monitor everything and everyone, not for control, but out of fear, because fear of being exposed, fear of being confronted, and fear of being held accountable. And wicked individuals eventually sabotage themselves. They overreact in front of the wrong person. They say too much. They accuse the wrong ally. They pick the wrong moment to explode. Their downfall becomes their own doing. And here's the truth: you didn't collapse them, their own energy did, their own motives did, their own intentions did. So return to sender simply removed your name from the consequences they created. After their power crumbles and their image cracks, after their tactics turn against them, after their control dissolves, there is one final truth: you were never under them. You were never above them. They were never above you. They only operated in deception long enough to believe their own version of reality. But once truth begins to surface, you see their weakness. You can recognize their insecurity. You can understand their fear. You regain your position. You reclaim your clarity, and you rise above their reach. You realize that their power was always an illusion, and you were always the one they feared, not because you fought them, but because you survived them. And there is a specific moment in every downfall where something shifts, not in the clan, not in you, but in the people who are watching from the sidelines. The moment the audience finally wakes up, the moment the environment opens its eyes, the moment people stop listening to their lies and start paying attention to their behavior, this is the moment wicked individuals fear the most. Not exposure, not consequences, not accountability. They fear being seen clearly, because wickedness relies on misunderstanding. It survives off misinterpretation. It thrives off confusion, and it hides behind image. But once clarity enters the room, their control evaporates, their reputation collapses, and the truth begins speaking louder than their stories. Wicked individuals survive off perception. They need the room to believe they're honorable. They need people to assume they're correct. And they need the environment to agree with their version of events. But masks are not eternal. Masks crack under pressure. Masks slip under truth. Masks melt under light. And this is how it begins. Someone catches a tone they've never heard. Someone witnesses a reaction that doesn't match the situation. Someone hears the way they speak about you when they think no one notices. Small inconsistencies expose big motives. Malicious individuals always assume the room is on their side. So they say something reckless. They show an attitude they should have hidden. They reveal resentment they can't disguise. And the person watching quietly thinks, that didn't seem right. They stumble over their explanations. Their stories contradict, and their words betray discomfort. People sense something is off, and once that seed is planted, the reveal begins. When return to sender activates, the environment gains spiritual clarity. People who once believed the wicked now see the behavior. People who excuse the actions now see the pattern of behavior, because people who thought now that you were overreacting now realize you were underreacting. This awakening happens in stages. Someone remembers an odd comment they ignored. Someone recalls a moment that didn't make sense. Someone replays a past interaction with new understanding. Awareness always precedes exposure. And once aware, people begin watching closely, not out of gossip, but out of curiosity. And wicked individuals behave differently when observed. Their tone shifts, their agitation rises, their mask becomes unstable. People start comparing how you carry yourself, how they carry themselves, how they react, how you respond, how they treat others, and how you treat others. Comparison destroys deception. And then comes the moment where the environment thinks this is who they've been the entire time. That realization is the reveal. Every malicious person hides their motives under roles that they play, personalities, and stories they create for themselves. But when the reveal comes, their motives rise to the surface unfiltered. These are the motives people begin noticing. People realize they were threatened by your grace, by your strength, by your resilience, and by your spiritual covering. Their envy can no longer be disguised as concern. People begin seeing that they weren't helping, they were competing, not for accomplishment, but for dominance. Their rivalry becomes undeniable. Their reactions become exaggerated. Their need for validation intensifies. Their emotion becomes disproportionate. People sense that they were confident. They were terrified of being overshadowed by someone protected. What once felt like influence now feels like control. People stop mistaking their tactics for leadership and begin recognizing them as emotional pressure. The same sweetness they used to lure support begins to taste bitter, because people sense the performance, people feel the insecurity, and people recognize the fakeness. The entire mass dissolves under public perception. This is the part your enemies never expected. Spiritual systems revealing what they try to hide. Once divine truth begins unfolding, the following happens. People pick up on discomfort, agitation, or defensiveness. What they used to hide privately now screams publicly. Under pressure, they lose the ability to pretend. Their mask drops. Their real self comes forward, and reactions reveal character. Responses expose motives. See, jealousy has a tone, and bitterness has a tone, resentment has a tone, right? And false righteousness also has a tone, and people hear it now. Every environment has a moment where truth becomes impossible to ignore. This is not rumor, this is not retaliation. This is spiritual clarity settling over the room like an announcement. This is who they really are. And this is the turning point, the moment the environment withdraws support from the wicked and extends quiet respect toward the chosen. Here's how you know the audience has switched sides. People who once defended him now avoid commenting, avoid agreeing, avoid joining the negativity. Support becomes absence, absence becomes distancing, and distancing becomes exposure. When they try to rally support, the room gives them nothing. No reaction, no agreement, no validation. They are talking to themselves, not in pity, but in respect. People think they handled that with grace. They stayed quiet. They didn't retaliate. They carried themselves well. Your character becomes the contrast that reveals their lack of it. Conversations you will never hear because people start protecting you without you knowing. And those conversations you never hear are taking place in your defense. People who used to be neutral become guardians of your name because they finally see the truth clearly. Once the reveal happens, life does not go back to how it was. Something shifts permanently in your favor. Everything they attempted to tarnish now shines brighter. People take you seriously. People value your voice, and people trust your discernment. Doors open because clarity has cleared the environment. You are no longer misunderstood. You are no longer misrepresented. Not dominance, but spiritual authority happens when your power returns, the kind that comes from surviving injustice with integrity intact. Their influence dies, their name stops carrying force, and their behavior becomes a warning. Their downfall becomes a lesson, not for you, but for everyone watching. The reveal wasn't just about exposing them, it was about elevating you. Because when truth finally comes forward, the chosen rise without pushing, without speaking truth, without fighting. They rise because truth lifted them. Thank you for visiting my channel. Stay covered, stay conscious, and stay undefeated. I'll see you on the next one.